freight train rolling, bringing truth bombs down the line. Promoting the Southland 1 week at a time. Promoting the Southland 1 week at a time. SCV chat starts now.
I didn't get to watch it, and maybe when I added that new slide in, it may have messed up the timing. Sounded like it messed up the timing. Oh well, if you didn't notice, we have a new sponsor for this season of SCV Chat. That sponsor is Creative Cockades. Research and documentation, quality workmanship, and professional customer service. Visit her shop. Google Creative Cockades, creativecockades.company.site for her shop. She's doing a great job, and we appreciate her support. But before we get really kicked off, the views and opinions expressed in this broadcast aren't necessarily those of the SCV, GEC, any division, brigade, camps, or other subsidiaries. Strictly those of us expressing them.
How's everybody doing?
Scrolling through the chat. Carl's in a mood tonight. Hi, Jack. He says, Fiversham, y'all. Ninja chops are even worse on granite than Judy chops, and you're right. But you know what is really worse? Open hand slaps. Learned that the fun way. My thumb swelling has actually finally go down. Hello, Gerald. Hello, Miss Linda. Hello, John. David Pope. Glad that it is a beautiful evening there in Tennessee. Hello, disclaimer. Hello there from the General Lewis Armistead camp in Jacksonville, North Carolina. Frank Kirby, good evening. Victor Smith, we will be praying for Daryl Rattery. Paul Gremning. Jason Lloyd, I hope you stayed dry at the 160th Wilderness this past weekend. Jack DuPont, hello. Kyle Thompson is here and on time. You can't get the Harold Philpott Award if you're on time, Carl. Hello, or not Carl, Kyle. Hello, Susie. Hey, Ray. And everybody else that's slowly but surely coming in. Hope y'all are having a great Monday. We have had a very interesting weekend. We drove for 12 hours yesterday. We had a wonderful detour at Shiloh, which was a beautiful day for it. Not if your allergies are acting up. No. But beautiful day to shoot some videos, especially 8 times because you wrote the script and you could not remember your lines.
8 times, just
at
8?
one video.
Yeah,
and we shot 4 videos. So we'll have one that we shot on location at Bloody Pond that will be debuting later on in the week. And it kind of goes into tonight's topic. But we had a great time at the National Confederate Museum at Elm Springs, at historic Elm Springs, at the Southern Cultural Center at Elm Springs. I think I got that right.
HQ.
We really need a T-shirt that has that on there so that everybody knows what we're talking about or where we're talking about. But yeah, HQ. We had the Army of Tennessee workshop on Saturday, as well as the pilgrimage. Great weekend. Got to see a lot of good compatriots, a lot of good things. Even, Moose and I have driven to headquarters many times together, bunch of times together, but we have never taken the Mini Pearl Parkway before. Just to let y'all know, don't do it at night. Don't do it in the rain. And don't do it and expect to be on the phone with Carl Jones, because your phone will die. Or it won't die. You'll lose signal.
His phone.
Yeah, you will call. Is your microphone come in yet?
No. I told you I ordered it like sometime last week.
It took mine only like 2 days to come in. But yeah, well, I also have Prime shipping. So on Sunday when we left and we got on the Army of Tennessee Highway, which is still winding, but not as up and down hills as bad as the Mini Pearl Parkway is, we in jubilation stopped and grabbed pictures there at the sign for the Army of Tennessee Memorial Highway. Because again, while I love Mini Pearl to death, the road named after her, no me gusta, which is Spanish for I do not like.
It's going to be one of them episodes.
I'm just, yes, that is the way to go. That is the way to go. I've got a couple of fruit flies in here because I had a banana earlier in the peeling and I left the door open for a minute. So if y'all see me swatting around, that's what it is. But yeah, so we did that. We were able to broadcast the pilgrimage. We hope that you go back and rewatch it. It was a great day with the several different other organizations. It would take too long to give a full replay or rewind. You can go and rewatch it on Facebook, YouTube, and on our website, scvchat.com. So let's do that. I see really quickly that somebody has put in a suggestion for an upcoming episode. Appreciate that, but really, and it's a glad thing that you mentioned it. We set our episodes somewhat out in advance, and we have a couple of open days where on our schedule where we are actually asking we're getting our Patreons, our patrons, our members of Patreon to suggest episode topics. So while we appreciate you throwing that in there, that's something that we're saving for those that are taking the $10 a month. The $10 a month to help support us, help us grow our reach and get better equipment. So their suggestions will come first. But hey, you can join Patreon. Our patron subscription thing is live now, so you can go to scvchat.com and click under the Support Us tab. Show them how to do that, Moose. You can pull up the website.
Yeah, let me get it real quick. All right.
I cannot open another tab or I'll crash my computer.
That's unfortunate. Let's see here. Here we go. I think. Aha! All right, so this is our home page. You would just need to go click on More, scroll down to Support Us, hit that, and boom, look at that. Our beautiful Patreon. There's a lot of perks that our Patreon gets. As GCB said, when we have a couple open episodes, we'll probably come to y'all for some support. You get early access to some of our content, as well as something else. But that will be talked about later. You can also go check out Bonfire, our store. Look at these wonderful T-shirts we have. They're all great.
And today is the last day. I think it ends at midnight to get our chat shirt 10% off with the code CHAT. Today's the last day to get that with 10% off. We will have in June at some point the Leave Dixie Alone shirt. We may have a sale on that. And then in July, the Nathan Bedford Forrest shirt, which is available in Tennessee Orange for their birthdays. A little thing on that. So yeah, but definitely if we when we take suggestions for topics, our patron subscribers, because they are supporting us, they get the first access. So if you want to do that, join Patreon today.
Yeah, we have a lot of great perks, like what GCB, of course, just said. So go check it out.
Yeah. So anyway, about the AOT workshop, we had a great time at that. This is the first AOT workshop we did not broadcast because A, we were presenting in part of it. B, we had to, or we didn't have to, we were broadcasting the pilgrimage ceremony, so we couldn't, set up in two places at one time. And we wanted to try to get people, there for the event. So it was a great time. Eric did a fantastic job on his adjutant training. We had some compatriots from the Tennessee division come and talk about the trading cards that they're doing. Lieutenant Commander in Chief Walter D. Donnie Kennedy gave a very impassioned speech. Carl Jones gave a wonderful speech on how to build and have a successful camp, as well as community outreach. Jimmy Hill built on that as well. And we talked about social media strategies to get to specifically target generations X, Y, and Z, and how a camp, division, brigade, or other subsidiary can see how, you like how I did that?
Oh yeah, that's some good stuff right there.
But we how they can use that and use social media as a tool to not only reach people but help camp communications. So no, Carl, we're not doing a Son of Harold Philpott shirt. It was a good time. Then of course we got up yesterday and we drove to Shiloh and filmed some videos at Shiloh. Then left Shiloh and we were going to stop at Friendship Cemetery, but as we were driving down, I think it was Highway 82, to get to where we need to be in central Mississippi, quite literally, we're passing a pasture on our left, and a bolt of lightning struck it, like right in the middle of that pasture.
It was interesting.
And I was like, nope, we're not stopping. And I ended the route there and put it in directly for the house. And we did stop and eat dinner and planned out some stuff for the future. A couple of key dates to remind everybody. On the Memorial Day, which is the 27th, we will not have an episode. We are going to, Moose and I are both going to be out of town, or traveling back from being out of town that day. So we're not going to have an episode on the 27th. We will do a replay of probably the last video reaction that we did. That one was pretty good, but we'll do that. What other dates were key in that, Moose? July 4th?
1 second. I got to pull it up. Let's see here. The days we don't have anything right now is looks like July 22nd, July 4th, and
May 27th.
Yeah, we have maybe off on that.
Yeah, that one's more than likely. I've been looking at my travel schedule. So July 4th, of course, is Independence Day, and we hope everybody has a wonderful Independence Day, but that's a Thursday, so we will not have Look Around the Confederation that day. We'll be off that. And then July 22nd, which is the Monday following the national reunion, we always take that Monday off.
Mm-hmm.
So we will be off those 3 days. But the 22nd, y'all will be tired of seeing us because starting on the 17th, we will be going live at least daily from the national reunion. So the 17th, 18th, 19th, and 20th, at least once a day, we will be going live We look forward to seeing everybody in Charleston. And if you have not registered for the National Reunion, like some people I know, register.
Yeah.
No,
I think
Jack, Friendship Cemetery is where General Stephen D. Lee is buried. You're thinking of Greenwood if you're talking about the cemetery in Jackson.
I've just been thinking about it, and I think a Son of Harold Philpott shirt would sell really well. I agree.
Maybe.
But I actually want to put a picture of him on it. Does anyone have a picture of the Son of Harold Philpotts? Because I know he's not on social media.
I think we need to stick a pin in that, because we have a lot more somewhat impressive designs of shirts.
I tried
that we're trying to launch for the Southern Signature Series.
Yeah, we got a lot of good stuff coming up,
including tonight's episode. You want to go ahead and do we want to take a break first and highlight again our sponsor for this season? Or do we need to, or do you want to dive into the video?
We can go ahead and kind of break up the episode and take a break and play one of our Pop-Tart commercials. But first,
this one's not a Pop-Tart. This is an actual commercial.
Oh, okay.
Pop-Tart breaks are at 7:35 and it's 7:22. Oh, wait, I'm forgetting something, Harrison.
What are you forgetting?
I'm forgetting Ancestor of the Week.
Oh, yes, you are.
Veteran of the Week. I've got the picture. You get the text.
All right, 1 second. Let me find the text. Where is he? I found it.
3, 2, 1. Veteran of the Week is Brigadier General Mark Perrin Lowry of the 32nd Mississippi Infantry in Lowry's Brigade of Claiborne's Division. He's the ancestor of Mike Moore, the Mississippi Division Adjutant. Fun fact about General Lowry, he is buried in Blue Mountain and was also, I believe, a preacher before the war, but for sure after the war. So just another example of the Southern soldier and their dedication to the Christian faith. So Mike is a great guy. He's been he was a great adjutant when I was division commander. He's still a great adjutant, and I hope one day that Harrison takes his place. As adjutant of the Mississippi Division.
Don't put that evil on the Mississippi Division.
Yeah.
Don't do that to him.
But anyway, again, our sponsor for this season is Creative Cockades. Every cockade has a story to tell. Research and documentation, quality workmanship, and professional customer service. Visit her website, creativecockades.company.site. She has more than just War Between the States reproduction cockades. She has some in the Confederate Memorial Tartan. She has a very, very cool one. I'll see if I can upload it really quickly, but it's based off of I don't have it saved. I have a copy of it somewhere, but it's based off of one that was used at a UCV reunion. I'll see if I can pull up her website really quickly and share it. Present, share screen, and boom, share. So scrolling through, these are some of the society ones that she has. Things like that. I need to hit back really quickly and go to her North American cockades. And as you see, she has Revolutionary War, War of 1812, Confederate, others. She's got the KGC badge, different flags, heroines. So if you have an OCR chapter, Alabama Secession Cockade, Arkansas, Florida, which is really cool looking, another Florida, Georgia, Maryland, Mississippi, Edwin Ruffin, Tennessee, Virginia, a light blue Virginia, Would love to get her to come to the Mississippi Archives and History and view the original that they have in their collection. Here it is. So this one I love to death and will probably purchase myself, but it's based off of an original UCV cockade. It's got a picture of Robert E. Lee in it. Really, really cool. And I imagine Harrison is wanting one right now.
Oh, yes. If I had money, I would have it already.
The Jeff Davis one, both ought to get those.
We should. That's a good idea.
So,
that Bonnie book is beautiful.
Yeah, she does amazing work. She's very well priced. In fact, this one you can you look here on it. You can submit a picture of your ancestor if you have one and have it in there. She also does it for mourning cockades as well. And then if you go into the Southern Heroes one, you can pick, Jubal Early or Jefferson Davis, John Bell Hood, if you're so, Beauregard, if you're so, and then of course, your ancestor. So give her a look, check out her website. And support the lady who is supporting us. And we will be right back after a message brought to you by our sponsor.
There is a place nestled in the rolling farmland of southern Middle Tennessee. A home constructed in 1837, nearly lost to the ravages of war. Saved by a servant and a Confederate general. A place where families loved and lost. If walls could talk, what stories could be told? If a place, a home, can feel love, loss, pain, surely this is one of those places. Nearby is a more recent structure, and inside are the stories of heroes and heroines, stories of battles won and lost, stories of sacrifices made by the people of its native soil. A place that will tell the true and complete story of the Southland and the war fought for its freedom. From the causes that led to the conflict to the modern-day struggles to protect Southern history. Historic Elm Springs and the Confederate Museum at Elm Springs are the general headquarters for the Sons of Confederate Veterans. A place where the story of the Southland and its historic struggle is preserved and told. Come and discover your history.
We're there, and we discovered our history this past weekend.
Mm-hmm.
And also discovered that unless you tell Moose to bring the tripod, he will leave it in the hotel room.
No. I told you. I delegated that to my assistant.
Yeah, well, he failed.
He did fail.
I delegated it to my assistant. Looking at you.
I'm still looking for him. I can't find him. He must be a small fella.
Fine. Former aide de camp and co-host.
Oh, I love how you. Okay, fine.
Anyway, so tonight we have a very special episode. When we announced it, we kind of waited on Facebook, but we put it on Patreon. It caused some confusion, though. We are doing a reaction video, but everybody thinks that we're picking some, as the commander-in-chief would say, some Pez head to that's talking bad about our ancestry and stuff like that and tearing him a new one. But ... we're not. We are actually picking up a video that we agree with, and we're talking about it. Now, Moose, go ahead and do your copyright stuff.
Please remember, that we are under the copyright disclaimer under Section 107 of the Copyright Act of 1976. Allowance is made for fair use for the purposes such as criticism, comments, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, and research. Fair use is a use permitted by copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing, one of them two. Nonprofit, educational, personal use tips the balance in favor of fair use. No copyright infringement intended. All rights belong to their respected owners.
Got the video?
I thought you were getting the video, but
I don't have the video.
Give me 1 second. 1 second. All right, I got it pulled up.
This week's video is...
It's getting there. 1 second. Ha-ha!
From the Abbeville Institute and the Gettysburg Address. Rewind it.
I was about to say, are you ready?
Yeah, rewind it. Let's get this. Let's kick this thing off.
The Gettysburg Address is perhaps the most iconic speech in American history. Students are required to memorize it, and it has become as important to American political culture as the United States Constitution or the Declaration of Independence. This is unfortunate because in this speech, Abraham Lincoln invented history, and by doing so, intellectually nuked the original Federal Republic. The address was not a conservative affirmation of founding principles, but a revolutionary manifesto that radically transformed America. Lincoln created a proposition nation at Gettysburg and crafted the greatest swindle in American political history. Lincoln delivered the Gettysburg Address on November 19, 1863, 4 months after one of the bloodiest battles of the War for Southern Independence. The president was invited almost as an afterthought to the event. He scribbled the speech on the train, a pithy 269 words that took him around 2 minutes to read, to a less than enthusiastic response from the gathered crowd. And Lincoln himself didn't think his words made much of an impact. Some members of the press agreed. The Chicago Times called it a flat and dishwatery utterance, while a Pennsylvania newspaper labeled it silly. Lincoln didn't realize it at the time, but future generations of Americans would buy his artful lie, hook, line, and sinker. It was common for both Northerners and Southerners to attach their respective causes to the principles of 76. For Southerners, that meant independence and resistance to a foreign power not of their choosing. But for some Northerners, the vast majority, the principles of 1776 carried a different meaning, one that Lincoln tapped at Gettysburg. From the onset of the war, Lincoln professed his desire to save the Union and the Constitution. That was the 1776 that most Northerners wanted to preserve. But at Gettysburg, Lincoln changed course. His 1776 constituted a radically different founding. 77 years ago, our fathers brought forth on this continent a new nation, conceived in liberty, and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. This is nothing more than propaganda, and the newspaper editors that called it silly were more accurate than anyone is willing to admit today. Neither Thomas Jefferson nor anyone else in the founding generation paid much attention to the line, all men are created equal. This was not a radical statement by egalitarian ideologues interested in liberty, equality, fraternity, as in the French Revolution. It was an affirmation of British history, that British subjects were equal under the law. Lincoln distorted that meaning. And by classifying the United States in 1776 as a nation, Lincoln was cementing a myth that had circulated since the ratification of the Constitution, namely, that the United States existed before the states, and he clothed his questionable legal acts in historical legitimacy. But the historical record does not support his position. The United States did not constitute a nation in 1776. It was a federal republic, held together in common cause against illegal and unconstitutional acts by both king and parliament. Even proponents of the Constitution recognized this by insisting that the document established a federal, not a national government. Lincoln continues his fairy tale history by insisting that this nation of equals was facing a frontal assault by the South. Now we are engaged in a great war, testing whether that nation or any nation so conceived and so dedicated No Civil War existed in 1863. The South is not seeking to control the government of the United States, and by insisting that the United States was conceived and dedicated to all men are created equal, Lincoln revolutionized the Revolution. This would have been news to the founding generation, the majority of whom warned of the dangers of a national government. Lincoln insisted that Union soldiers gave their lives defending his proposition nation, but the evidence supports a different conclusion. Desertion rates skyrocketed after Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation in 1863, and most Union soldiers, even at the time Lincoln delivered the address, insisted they were fighting for the Union, not the proposition that all men were created equal. Even during the war, some northern states had exclusionary laws that forbade blacks from living there. Racism was as deep-rooted in the North as in the South, and Lincoln never had an epiphany that blacks and whites were equal. In 1862, he said that blacks could never be placed on an equality with the white race, and insisted that the races be separated. He was opposed to slavery, but not to racism. By no means supported full equality in 1863. Lincoln eulogized the Union men who bled and died at Gettysburg for their dedication to some mythical, unfinished work. What he poetically believed was that this nation, under God, shall have a new birth of freedom, and that government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth. These lines have resonated across the decades and have become near theological dogma from an American demigod. But Lincoln was playing fast and loose with the facts, even in 1863. What new birth of freedom was he referring to? Slavery still existed in Union-controlled regions of the South, and Lincoln himself proposed in 1865 to postpone emancipation if the South would simply stop fighting for its independence. And was the Confederate government not elected of the people, by the people, and for the people of the South? The Southern states voted to secede through popularly elected conventions and larger majorities than those which supported American independence in 1776. By waging war against the South, Lincoln was undermining the very principles he pledged to support. The Gettysburg Address is graceful, but it is as hollow as the soul of an echo. If Lincoln didn't think it that important, perhaps we should ignore it as well. Our understanding of American government and history would be better for it.
Before we move on, please go support the Abbeville Institute by watching this video. The more of you that watch it for them, the better it is for them. And also make sure you hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications because they have great stuff.
Yeah, and follow, definitely also subscribe to their page on you can literally email, or not email, but you get a weekly email on that. So yeah, it is fantastic. And if you go on the Abbeville Institution's website, there are several articles out there, and even a copy of what McClanahan says, so you can read along with it or everything like that. So it is historical gold, as Carl Jones just pointed out. In fact, Carl has written for the Institute. You can read some of his ramblings on there. But definitely, say again?
I said Carl's articles are good.
Yeah.
I have no life. I read the Abbeville Institute in my spare time.
Well, it is a great jumping off point for historical research.
Oh yes.
So a lot to unpack there. One thing that I love about Brian is that he mentions the founding generation, which of course, Brian McClanahan is. His first book, I believe, was the Politically Incorrect Guide to Understanding the Founding Fathers. And Brian is a wonderful scholar, but he talks about the founding generation. And indeed, it's important to do that because Lincoln even talks about the founding generation. He says in his beginning of his address 77 years ago, of course, referring to the Declaration of Independence. And, I get it. Lincoln was a self-educated scholar, taught himself to read and all that other stuff. Well, evidently he didn't teach himself how to comprehend, because if he had, and he really did study the Declaration of Independence, he would have read the key portion of the Declaration of Independence, which we've quoted on here. But you have to remember back to this key portion was also it was introduced by a Virginian, a Lee of Virginia, but it was essentially be it resolved that these colonies are and ought right to be free and independent states. Let's pause right there. And that's key. Independent states. They are independent states. Independent states. Capital S in states. A state being not just like what we think in these United States, a section of it, but no, its own independent country, acting upon itself, that they of and ought right to be free and independent countries, that they are absolved, and again, that they, collective, not we, not saying we, that's collective, but not it is absolved, they are absolved from all allegiance to the British Crown, and that all political connection between, what's that word, Harrison?
Between, let's see here, my eyes. Between them and the state of Great Britain.
Wait. What was that after between?
The state of Great
No.
Britain.
After the word directly after between, them. Between them, meaning more than one. Them. Think of it. Who's over there? They're over there. It's them. Them. More than one. And the state of Great Britain. Again, look at independent states and how the state of Great Britain, it's making the independent states equal with the state of Great Britain. It's a balancing act. It's showing that they are independent and they're equal to, as their own sovereign nations, than Great Britain. That it is and of all totally be dissolved, and that free and independent states, they have the power to levy war, conclude peace, contract alliances, establish current commerce, and do all other acts and things which independent states may do. That was the view of the founding generation, 77 years prior. It was not, that was their view. That was the view of 1776. And again, Brian is completely correct in his understanding and stating out the fact that they were free and independent states, that the idea of the founders were that these United States were, not is. I think Shelby Foote said something to the fact of what was the big thing that the war did. It took them from a collective group of states to the idea of a solidified union, which again is something that Lincoln is proposing in his Gettysburg Address. But if we want to continue to look at the ideas of the founding generation, especially the man who wrote the Declaration of Independence, especially what Jefferson wrote later on, in the Kentucky and Virginia resolutions, pretty much in his Kentucky resolution, he wrote that when you boil it down, two main points. One, that the Union is a compact amongst individual states that delegates specific powers to the federal government, delegates very specific powers to the federal government, and reserves the rest for the states to exercise themselves. Individual states have the right and duty to intervene between citizens and the federal government. And that's what secession was the idea that they should be able to, we don't like what the federal government's doing. It's overstepping its bounds, so we're quitting.
Mm-hmm.
But Lincoln in 1863 did not understand that. But you know what's funny, Harrison?
What's funny, GCB?
Lincoln understood that in 1848.
Really?
Yeah. Lincoln said in January of 1848, in a debate about the Mexican War, any people anywhere being inclined and having the power have the right to rise up and shake off the existing government and form a new one that suits them better. I mean, yeah. This is right. This is a most valuable, a most sacred right, a right which we hope and believe is to liberate the world. Unless you're already in his perpetual union. That Lincoln, is implying that. I mean, that's one of the things in Lincolnian American or even most Yankee thought process is that the Union existed before the Constitution. And I love the fact that Brian brings up the join or die picture that Ben Franklin drew. And most people who look at that think that, oh, well, if they think of it with a nationalist point of view, and they don't realize that Ben Franklin actually got the idea of that from the Iroquois Confederacy, excuse me. The Confederation of Native American tribes who, even though they were independent of each other, joined and band together to fight European settlement on the North American continent. That they were trying to preserve their way of life, that they created their own tribal confederated government. So I'm really glad that he put that on there because it's so misinterpreted by modern historians. So that's very good. David Pope actually sent us this quote, and it's a rather long quote, and I'll bring it up here in a second. But he makes a really, really good point in what he presented. Pull down General Mark Parham Lowry really quickly for me. Thank you. But let us not forget that it is talking about the Gettysburg Address, that it is oration, not logic, beauty, not sense. Think of the argument in it. Put it into the cold words of every day. The doctrine is simply this, that the Union soldiers who died at Gettysburg sacrificed their lives to the cause of self-determination. Quote, that government of the people, by the people, and for the people should not perish from the earth. It is difficult to imagine anything more untrue. The Union soldier in that battle actually fought against self-determination. It was the Confederates who fought for their rights of the people to govern themselves. What was the practical effect of the Battle of Gettysburg? Next slide says that what else than the destruction of the old sovereignty of the state, i.e. of the people of the state. The Confederates went into battle an absolutely free people, and they came out with their freedom subject to the supervision and vote of the rest of the country. And for nearly 20 years, that vote was so effective that they enjoyed scarcely any freedom at all. Am I the first American to note the fundamental nonsensicality of the Gettysburg Address? If so, I plead my aesthetic joy in the emulation of their sacrilege. Excuse me. That was from H.L. Mencken, from his book. Mencken. Sorry. Drove for 12 hours yesterday. His book Prejudice, his third series, published in 1922, roughly around page 71 or 75, depending on which copy you get. But thank you, David Pope, for sharing that. Really quickly, looking back through this, Carl makes a very good point. Article 3 of the Constitution refers to the states as their and them and not it and its. Another more proper way of referring to the United States would be the United States. No state would have ratified a singular, inescapable, and indivisible nation, and that's true. The founders fought a war, to leave to leave Great Britain. That generation understood the horrors and understood independence, just like our Confederate ancestors did. And again, just like Brian said, the idea of this perpetual union, everything morphs. Really, the Gettysburg Address is a piece of propaganda, but it's propaganda to force to, like he said, change history, change the narrative for the Union to make Lincoln look less like a tyrant. And we'll talk more about the tyranny of Abraham Lincoln in a second. I'm trying to get caught up on this. John, that speech was given in 1848, January 12th, 1848, about the war with Mexico. So if you Google any people anywhere, Abraham Lincoln, it'll bring up that portion of the speech. Carl Jones also says every Congress leading up to independence and every Congress during the war was dissolved when business was concluded. As John Adams pointed out, a Congress was merely a meeting of ambassadors from sovereign states. Again, that whole idea, that spirit of 1776, that the states were independent of each other, that they were joined together for common that later on comes into the Constitution, but that it's a compact, that it's not a indivisible pre-existing, hey, once you join this social club, you can't quit this social club and we get to tell you how to live your life. That was not the idea. Nobody would freely join that type of institution.
No, and I think it's ridiculous for people to think that as soon as our founding fathers got out of Great Britain, they would want to enter into an agreement of never-ending status, that they couldn't leave, that the people that wanted independence so bad that they left a nation would go and do it again. Doesn't really make sense.
Right. And it really, really doesn't. As far as the speech in and of itself, Brian mentions a couple of contemporary firsthand accounts from reporters. He of course mentioned the Chicago Times, which, where's Abraham Lincoln from, everyone? Illinois. Where's Chicago? Illinois. Yeah. So it's very appropriate to point out that even his fellow Illinoisans said, and the whole quote was, the cheek of every, and this is completely sarcasm, when they say the cheek of every American must tingle, or actually, excuse me, it's not must tingle, and then ... with the shame as he reads the silly, flat, dishwatery utterances of the man who has to be pointed out to intelligent foreigners as the president of the United States. It's sarcasm about, you should feel a tingle. Well, I'm reading a sarcasm. I apologize. No, your cheek should be a flush with embarrassment. That's what they're implying. But you should be flushed with embarrassment when you read that. Now, he talks about the foreigners, and it's very important that we bring up one quote from the Times of London. When they wrote of the speech, the Gettysburg Address, the ceremony at Gettysburg was rendered ludicrous by some of the luckless sallies of that poor President Lincoln. And then, of course, they mentioned the Harrisburg Patriot and Union when they wrote, we pass over the silly remarks of the president for the credit of the nation. We are willing that the veil of oblivion shall be dropped over them and that they shall no more be repeated or thought of. Again, his own people did not even care for the speech. There's a quote from the guy who gave the main, and he wasn't, and like Brian said, Lincoln wasn't even the main speaker at this. And Lincoln says in there that something of the world will little remember what we say here today, trying to pawn off that, the world's not going to remember what I say. But it's not until well, let me backtrack. The main orator of the day, said, "Oh, that was such a great speech." Well, it's kind of like a macaroni picture of a dog that looks like an octopus that your kid or grandkid gives you. You say, "Oh, yes, sweetie, that's great." It's kind of, in my opinion, the same thing. But really, a lot of the quotes and stuff that you see from Stanton or Sumner, rather, talking about the speech is after 1865, after Lincoln dies, and the North begins to deify Lincoln. Again, I think it's very appropriate that Brian calls him a demigod.
I do too. I kind of want to piggyback off something Carl said and something Brian said, I believe. The founders seceded twice, once from Great Britain, second from the Articles of Confederation. So, Connor, just to throw this out there,
we seceded from ourselves.
Yeah. Well, technically, 3 times you count the South because that was legal. So, which came first, Connor? The United States or the states?
Well, I would think 1776 comes way before 1780 when the Constitution was ratified. And even before then, the fact that each individual state still had to ratify the Constitution and wasn't left up to a federated Congress do that.
It took 2 years. The Constitution was written in 1787. It didn't get ratified and accepted until 1789. So that is when you can officially say there was a United States of America. Before that, though, there was Virginia. There was Mississippi. Well, no, not Mississippi.
No, 1817.
Sorry, I have Mississippi pride. I just wanted to throw them in there, and then I remembered my state's birthday.
Well, there was Virginia, there was South Carolina, there was Georgia, Delaware, New Jersey, New York, Rhode Island, Massachusetts, Connecticut, going up the Eastern Seaboard, Vermont. You had the original 13 first, and again they had to each individually ratify. They each individually had to agree to work together. They were each independent free states.
Yes. And one thing that I want to point out, I liked it. The Declaration, I can't remember where at, but, it says government rests upon the consent of the governed. Government just doesn't get to come in and make a decision for you. Government can't come in and tell you how you should make a decision. They shouldn't come in and control your lives. And that is one of the basics of why we left. And let's see what Carl said. That's a good point, Carl. Very good point. If the states had not been sovereign, they'd have no authority to ratify the Constitution. Every state had to have a constitution making it a sovereign entity prior to entering the Union. The states came first. Man, I love having Carl in the comments.
I think what you're trying to get at is that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their powers from the consent of the governed.
Yeah, that's right. I was paraphrasing. I probably should have said that, but that's the exact quote from it.
Yeah, that's the exact quote. But you know what the next part of the quote is?
What is it, Connor?
I'm trying to get it to load into StreamYard.
Oh.
The next quote is that whenever any form of government becomes destructive to these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or abolish it and to institute new government. So, now if we take those same ideas from the founding generation that Lincoln is quoting or not paraphrasing, but referencing when he's saying 7 years ago, and he's talking about that document that was done 7 years previous. The South had the right because they instituted, the men, or I say the men, but the citizens instituted their government. They consented that some of the powers would be given to that government. And when they felt that that form of government became destructive to their ends, of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, it was their right to alter, which they did, or abolish it, which they did. They altered it by leaving, and then they abolished it by leaving. And they instituted a new government. A government that was of the people of Mississippi, of South Carolina, of Georgia, we'll just look at, or South Carolina, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, Florida, Louisiana, Texas. If you want to count about the first 7, then Virginia, Tennessee, North Carolina, Arkansas, Kentucky, and Missouri. Maryland didn't get a chance because Lincoln didn't like the idea that he didn't like what he said in 1848 anymore. He didn't like what Jefferson said in 1776, so he arrested the secession delegate or the secession convention of Maryland. But still, they exercised their rights, formed their government of the people, by the people, and for the people, and then called up a murderous horde to force them back into the Union at the point of a bayonet. And instead of saying, "Hey, my bad, I'm the tyrant, I'm the one that's causing, that's breaking every piece of American governance, whether it's the Constitution or whether it's our founding principles and documents. Instead, I'm going to take it and morph it to fit my own ways, so that I can maybe get reelected next fall and continue this oppressive war against the South." My views and opinions, though.
Talking about oppression, well, it's historical fact. Talking about oppressions or oppression, someone who endorsed Lincoln after the Gettysburg Address happened in January 1865. GCB, do you know who endorsed Lincoln at that point?
Oh, go ahead and tell me.
Karl Marx. A communist, a nationalist. He was happy.
He was British.
He was British? I said nationalist. Believing in a strong federal government.
Yeah, still British.
He's British. We had to throw that in. But I forgot where I was going with that now. But he believed in a strong federal government. He endorsed Lincoln after the Gettysburg Address. Not before, but after. Believing that what was happening in America was his dream, or at least part of it. Why would he do that? It's because at that point in 1865, the death of the sovereign state was happening, and the birth of a nationalist mindset was born.
Yeah, and I love the fact that Brian, to change subject a little bit, which you mentioned that quote from Lincoln where he did not believe in. You look up that quote.
So there's one quote where he thinks that interracial marriage is extremely wrong, and there's one where he says I will never ever believe in the fact that the white man and the black man are equal.
Right, and he says I've something along the fact of I've never. Let me see if I can Google it really quickly.
I have it in here if I can just find it in my mess of a phone. Let's see if I can find it. Let me 1 second.
Well, anyway, while you're looking it up, there's a physical difference between the white and the black races, which I believe will forever forbid the two races of living together. While they do remain together, they must be in position of superior and inferior, and I'm as much as any man in favor of having a superior position assigned to the white race. Now, that's one of Lincoln's quote in the Stephen Douglas debate.
I got 3.
Oh, here it is. I will say that I am not, nor have I ever been in favor of bringing about in any way the social and political equality of whites and blacks together. No, that's not it. What's the third one?
I have 3 right here, but let's see here. I don't think they're from this debate. One is from 1858. What I would most desire would be the separation of the white and black races. And one in 1862, I cannot make it better known than it already is that I'm strongly favor black deportation.
Yeah, that's not the quote I'm looking for.
And then I have my enemies pretend that I'm now carrying on this war for the sole purpose of abolishing. So long as I am president, it shall be carried on for the sole purpose of restoring the Union.
No, not that one. It's one where he talks about making jurors out of blacks. But anyway, it's mighty interesting that again that's like 6 or 7 quotes from Lincoln, or five quotes from Lincoln with his race views. But it's in 1853, his own home state. Say again.
Are you talking about the one where he's talking about equality?
Yeah.
I am not, nor have ever been in favor of bringing about in any way the social and political equality of the white and black races.
Yeah, there we go. That one. And Brian also mentions that many states had anti-black laws, including Lincoln's own home state of Illinois. In 1853, they passed a constitution, or actually, excuse me, 1848, the same year Lincoln's in Congress talking, in favor of Texas's secession from or Texas's independence from Mexico. The state of Illinois passed a constitution that required the state legislature to prohibit African Americans from moving to Illinois. So that's and that was an ongoing thing. But yet, historians and people who love Lincoln for and call him the great emancipator and love him for the new birth of freedom that he brings up in his in the Gettysburg Address, they failed to mention that. They failed to mention the historical hypocrisy in Lincoln himself, in not only his home state but within the rest of the North. They failed to mention that in July of 1863, after the Battle of Gettysburg, right after the Battle of Gettysburg, there was such hatred for the war that when the draft was kicked off in the North, and they offered the ability for you to be able to buy a substitute, and not have to go fight, that they rioted in New York City, and that a vast majority of the New Yorkers ganged up on the African American inhabitants of New York, and people failed to mention that. They failed to talk about that. They failed to bring that to the table. Yet, Lincoln is deifying his own soldiers by saying, "Oh, they're going to bring out a new birth of freedom to help push his idea of the Emancipation Proclamation," which really, if you want to look at the Emancipation Proclamation, didn't do anything. You muted yourself there, Harrison. But it in occupied territories, and by occupied territories, I mean places in Louisiana and Tennessee that had already been recaptured by the Union, that was under federal occupation. The people in those areas were able to keep their slaves, whereas the rest of the South, it was a threat to get them back into the Union, which goes back to that whole ideology. If the South only cared about the institution of slavery and fighting for the institution of slavery, why didn't they just go back under federal command and federal authority? No, it was about imposing their will onto us. Lincoln just tries to take the moral high ground and tries to build the moral high ground. Again, complete propaganda started before this, but really codified in his Gettysburg Address.
I mean, we've already talked about a couple times Lincoln, and it's one of my favorite topics. I'm happy we're revisiting after this much time, because the Gettysburg Address, and I think me and you've talked about this behind the scenes, just proves that he was a dictator and a great politician.
Tyrant.
Yeah. All this was to try to push for his view of the nation. so he could form it to how he wanted to form it. And we've already showed how he contradicts himself and what he really thinks about the African American people. The great emancipator is a lie.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, he was just like any other politician. He was a propagandist.
Mm-hmm.
And kind of to go back, and you'll see this in our video that we'll be posting Wednesday. He and Brian correctly changes to a more correct context in the video. He says, now we are engaged in a great war. He leaves out, because Brian knows better, he leaves out the fact that Lincoln called it a civil war. And the definition of a civil war, and Brian mentions it, or he makes allusion to it, is that a civil war is a war fought between people of the same nation trying to gain control of the government. The South did not want control of the federal government. Jefferson Davis said it in 1861 in an address to the Confederate Congress. All we ask is to be let alone. That would make a great T-shirt.
And you can find it at www.scvchat.com.
Yeah, go to support us. But that's the thing. And Carl's right in the comment he just posted. Lincoln was motivated by money and power, plain and simple. And again, piggybacking off of our video we did where we spent a lot of time on the Cornerstone speech, which I think we did an independent video on that and posted it.
Yes.
Didn't we? Okay. So in the Cornerstone speech that is misquoted by historians.
We have not. We haven't posted it. We did.
Okay.
We posted the podcast, not the video on the Cornerstone.
Okay. We'll need to post that. I thought we'd already posted it. All right. No. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about that post show. But if Stevens did say what the reporter thinks he said, and what the reporter reported him saying, because Stevens said in 1865 that he never said that. All Stevens was pointing out, and I'm paraphrasing Stevens's memoirs or his diary. Stevens said that all he was trying to point out was the differences between the old Constitution and the new Constitution. The old Constitution being the federal government Constitution, and the new Constitution being the new Confederated government's Constitution. And in that, he mentions the tariff that was placed on the South. That was the money was then used to do certain internal improvement projects across the North. Like the Erie Canal, like building railroads, things of that nature. The money was made off the backs of the South, but yet was not used in the South. It was used to pay for the less prosperous North, and making them the industrial superiority over our agrarian superiority, which goes back to the idea of Jeffersonian American versus Hamiltonian America, which again is Lincoln was a Hamiltonian in his views and things like that. But still, that was a major factor. And again, going back to Lincoln, who's reported of saying, when the South seceded, well, who's going to pay for my government? And then power. That's the one thing I love about the Steven Spielberg movie Lincoln. It is hours before the Constitution Amendment passes. And he's trying to literally buy the votes from certain Democrats who are not going to be sworn into the next Congress, so he can get bipartisan support. And he's talking to William Seward, and Lincoln is frustrated because everybody's saying we can't do it, we can't do it. And he slaps the table and he yells, "I am the president of the United States, cloaked in immense power." And I love that, because that's one thing they got right.
Oh,
that's one thing Spielberg got right in that is the fact that the man was so obsessed with his own power that's all it was his government, his power, who's going to pay for it, and how he can continue to grow the office of the presidency. To where nowadays it's not even real legislation, but it's, legislation by executive fiat. I'll just sign an executive order because I'm the president and everybody thinks we have to do it. And that all comes back from the Lincolnian birth that happened. And yeah, he was right. Maybe not a birth of a new freedom, but a birth of a new nation. Completely killing that the founders wanted, that our ancestors were willing to fight and die for. Instead of maintaining the principles of the founders, this new centralized government that was completely surpassing or usurping the powers delegated by the states to the centralized government, and making that centralized government the main driving force that we have to this day.
I think you hit the hell.
Hit the head on the nail.
Yeah, I'll get it out. I'm for some reason I'm just exhausted. I don't know why. I felt a bit more energy before this episode, and it has left me very quickly.
Trying to scroll through, see if I've missed anything.
Oh.
I'm reading through the text of Brian's video. Lincoln continues his fairy tale of history by insinuating that this nation of equals was facing a frontal assault by the South. So now we're engaged in a great civil war, testing whether that nation or nation so conceived, so dedicated. Really, you want to look at a nation of equals. You want to look at a nation of equals. We are not a nation of equals. We are sure not a nation of equals. Where in 2024, we can't even have a reconciliation monument anymore over Confederate graves. Where we can't even have memorials to our fallen dead because it may hurt somebody's feeling. But yet people can have put up monuments and statues or pieces of art, as they call it, and things like that. We can't remember our dead. We can't remember our history, our heritage. It has to come back on a second string. We've been relegated as a people to a second-class citizenry. My opinions, my views.
Correct views.
Yeah, but my views. But we've been forced to be that way for 160 years. So much for his nation of equality, that he's talking about. Of course, it never applies to the South anyway. Scrolling back through Brian's talking points really quickly. I think we've covered that we were not a nation in the sense we were a group of states that were bound together. We've helped prove again that the historical record does not support Lincoln's position. Check mark on that. It was a federal republic held together in common cause against, yeah. I think that's all my talking points.
Hey, look at us go.
So yeah, scrolling through, looking at Carl's talking points. I think he put that one up, but I didn't get to read it. Lincoln brought into Hamilton's theory of implied powers, which Hamilton said you must read between the lines of Constitution to find. Jefferson said, I've read between the lines of the Constitution, only found blank space. And that's right. The Constitution is a black and white document. It's shalls. Like the shall not be infringed. We shall not create a national religion. It's very specific on what can happen and what can't happen. And Adam, we hung pretty well with you wild Tennessee bunch. It's as far as you saying
it was catching up to work today that got me.
Yeah, it was the 12-hour drive back home that got me.
Yeah, I've been in the sun all day, so I'm just dead tired.
Yep.
All right. Well, you said that's all your talking points.
All my talking points.
Yeah, I got all mine too. So I guess without further ado, it's time to sign off for tonight. We want to thank everybody for watching. Make sure to share this episode out and email us at scvyouthOutreach@gmail.com, and you'll be featured on the upcoming episode of Look Around the Confederation. This week,
email your camp, division, and brigade news and pictures.
yes.
Don't just email us. Don't just say hi.
We won't respond to that. But yes, please email us. Tune in at 7 p.m. Confederate Standard Time. We will have Carl Jones on to talk about his platform for Army of Tennessee Commander. And make sure you check out Look Around Florida this Tuesday at 7 p.m. as well. I don't know what Mr. Sean has planned, but you can expect a lot of good stuff from the Florida man. Make sure, yeah. Oh, I always forget. We have flyers now. Look at that. Aren't they beautiful? Aren't they beautiful? Oh, yeah. Make sure on the Look Around, you send everything in before 3 p.m. on Thursdays to ensure that it gets on the episode. But without further ado, oh, wait. Yep. Patreon. Support it, please. Or Connor will do something. We'll force Connor to do something.
Yeah, no, we won't. Also, support this season's sponsor, Creative Cockades. Every cockade has a story to tell, research and documentation, quality workmanship, and professional customer service. CreativeCockades.company.site. Miss Heather Sheen does a fantastic job. In fact, Moose will be getting a version of a Mississippi Secession cockade in June. Yeah, and in fact, I would love to see everybody in the Confederation get one from your home state, or at least the home state of your ancestor if you're in Upper Dixie, to wear to the national reunion. So that would be good. David Pope says that he got the StreamYard issue fixed. Friday Night Live will be in a week and a half. The new blog that just started, East Tennessee Confederate Chronicle.wordpress.com. Give David a look, a watch. David, like I said, he gave us those slides talking about the Gettysburg Address, and we appreciate him sending that. David got a preview of this episode because he's a member of Patreon. So he was able to send in his talking points and stuff like that. If you are a member of the SCV, but you know somebody who does not have the genealogical or physical requirements to join the SCV, recruit them for the friends of the SCV. You do not have to be it's open to men and women. For $45, you get a subscription to the Confederate Veteran magazines for 1 year, a membership certificate, and a lapel pin. Subsequent donations of $35 or more each year will continue your Confederate Veteran subscription. Visit scv.org for more information. We have about 250-ish friends. We need to be up to 250,000. Think about the people that you know in your community that support us but can't join because they don't have the blood that we do. Well, they can still support us this way. Hey, Moose, have you gotten your chat t-shirt yet?
Not yet. Mine's on the way, though.
Would be a lot cooler if you did, because we have a lot of them that tie into tonight's episode. We've shown the Jeff Davis Leave Dixie Alone, but also we have the South was right in 1861 because America was right in 1776.
Amen.
We also have a Thomas Jefferson one. The true patriot will defend his country from its government. Huh. There's another quote from the founders that disproves Lincoln.
Amen.
And, of course, all we ask is to be let alone.
You know, some of these days, the more the government gets controlling and wiping away our heritage, I agree with good old President Jefferson Davis. Just leave us alone.
And remember what Patrick Claiborne said before his death. Surrender means that the history of this heroic struggle will be written by the enemy, that our youth will be trained by Northern school teachers, will learn from Northern school books their version of the history of the war. Things like the Gettysburg Address will be impressed by all of the influences of history and education to regard our gallant dead as traitors and our main veterans as fit subjects for diversion. Patrick Claiborne said that. It's our duty to prevent that from happening. Harrison, what I had to when I believe it was high school that it was a requirement for me to memorize the Gettysburg Address. What my father made me memorize?
What?
I had two things to memorize. I had to memorize Robert E. Lee's definition of a gentleman and General Order Number 9.
That's pretty cool, actually.
So for every one thing of that tyrant I learned two things of Lincoln. Or excuse me, two things of Lee. God, I'm tired. God forgive me for saying that. Whew, Lord. We are give out.
Yeah.
Anyway, Moose will be back on Thursday. So remember to check out our other shows, other ways to support us on Patreon, support our sponsor. Remember that even though April is over, Confederate Heritage is not just April, but it's 365 days a year. So get out there and do something. Be that positive influence you want to see in your camp. Like the page, share the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. And in the words of the late and great Harold Philpott, remember, as always, no Fumar in the elevator.
No Fumar in the elevator.
And Redder Frog.